zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave for another day of death and destruction in the good old cryptocurrency land. I just heard the weirdest song of all time in my life, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we got some very important magic into money business get deep and down and dirty into right here, right now. Before we get into it, I do want to remind myself that, yes, this week in actually exactly 2 days, I think that's going to be Thursday, the 12th, is going to be literally the 2-year anniversary of this cave, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and I really need to like sit down and just meditate on that thought, because it's something that has become such a big part of my life, and how the fuck has it even been 2 years already? It's just been flown by. Anyways, it's been the fucking time of all times. And with that said, for the 2-year anniversary, of course, we're going to have a massively discounted period for, I don't know, like a week or whatever it is. You'll have plenty of information on that starting on, again, the 12th, which is in 2 days. My backwards camera right over here showing my bald spot on the back of my head, not working right now, so unfortunate with that. And also, I should say, the complete newbie program, which is going to be named something a little bit more endearing than that. I think we're going to be calling it the Neophytes Initiation. Is going to be posted likely tomorrow, Wednesday, and if not, definitely Thursday for the beginning of that 2-year anniversary. Anyways, with all of that said, I want to wish you the best and the happiest of the happiest. Getting some magic net money analysis right here, right now, and starting with the Krown trading application, which is getting updated with each and every it's almost like each and every passing day now. But has recently been reskinned, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's so fucking, it's just everything that I wanted right now. And there's more coming, more importantly. The trading journal function is now live. However, we have to limit the amount of trades that we pull in because of the way that whole data gathering works, it actually does end up costing quite a bit of money. So with that said, take advantage of that. You can find your own free account at app.crowntrading.net, and you'll be having all of this right in front of your face for whatever you want. Anyways, Bitcoin dominance more or less steady here. Did point up a little bit, which is interesting. Bitcoin falling a little bit more than alts on the whole. We do see that overall total market cap down just a smidgen there, more or less steady, and the crypto fear and greed index still hanging down in the teens right now. And I do think that is we're kind of gearing up for a nice little bouncy bounce on the medium term timeframes relatively soon. Anyways, what's more important to me is the open interest, which has been steadily coming down ever since like the last few weeks. But more importantly, we saw that very specific signature that we wanted to see from not yesterday, but this past week, where the open interest was actually going, or it was kind of more or less flat, but technically going down a little bit, while price action was rising all throughout last week while volume was coming down. That was the key indication that was making us more bearish on this channel, looking for price action to just ultimately go lower, which is what it has now. $1,000 more than $1,000 later, actually more like almost $1,500 later is coming to fruition. So with that said, I do want to be looking at the open interest as also another major indication of that next potential medium term time frame bounce. When I say medium term time frame bounce, I mean a bounce that's going to be $400, maybe $500, something like that. But overall, the buy still stands to the downside, which we'll get into in just a second here. What I really want to see from the open interest is I want to see it on this page right here go below 1 billion. That's where I'd really start to look for, a difference, a change in behavior on, at the very least, a low and medium time frame. So let's get into the actual charts right now. And starting off with Bitcoin, this is a fucking hourly. It's not all that helpful, but I just want to follow up from yesterday's price action. We did say that it was likely to come back down and re-swipe the lows at 77.50. We got that. Yes, we did get a wick lower, but I don't really wicks come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. What we're concerned with is closures. No closures below 77.50, so that next leg down was postponed at least for now. And more importantly, we got that bounce that we spoke about as well, up into almost about 8,000. I do think that this is going to have another chance to bounce a little bit more. However, on the very low timeframes, I do want to state, while we are still kind of hanging down around here, it does look to me like Bitcoin's going to make another swipe of these current lows, somewhere around 7,700 to 7,750. However, I would say essentially the same thing as yesterday. That's probably going to offer up another little, at the very least, low time frame opportunity. I do think that Bitcoin Bitcoin, deep, or sorry, not deep, but just grazing this blue box territory right around here is still kind of a bounce area from the short and perhaps even medium term time frames, until we actually fully and formally break it on a 4 hour, which I do think Bitcoin is kind of running out of a little bit of short term momentum. I do think that overall, I don't want to be on the record as saying overall, I do think that we're going to go lower, but for right now, while we did get the move that we were looking for yesterday, both the move to the downside and the bounce back up, I do think we're probably going to get a very, very similar reaction again today, where we come back down, graze this area a little bit. If Bitcoin can come back down, graze this area, maybe even make a slightly lower low, then I'd be looking for some sort of divergence to be formed on our 4 hour time frame chart. So I wouldn't really be looking for that next short-term time frame bounce. Like, short-term time frame bounce, we did get one yesterday. I mean, that was a $300 move. That's very much, or actually a little bit more than, it was more like tree fitty. So I suppose this would align for more of a medium term time frame bounce, but we will very likely be making some bullish divergence on the 4 hour right here. If Bitcoin does come back down and retest around these lows, maybe we graze against 7650-ish region right over here. But as long as this blue box territory is not broken, the blue box is of peace and prosperity, I'd look for that divergence play to likely provide the impetus for a nice bounce, and we'll pop back up and test the next blue box of death and decay right around here, which doesn't change anything from the medium time frame perspective or higher, but does obviously offer up some nice short-term opportunities here. So this is also going to likely come in line with what the traditional markets are doing, which actually closed pretty much on the lows yesterday, which is likely going to incite some more continuation coming into today. But it is one of those weird things that just seems to happen a lot of the time, and I really like to back away from this type of analysis, because I just don't think that usually it's mostly bullshit, but this is one of those weird truths of the market. Typically Tuesday is a nice little turnaround day. They call it turnaround Tuesday, and usually, after a bloody Monday, you do see a little bit of at least a reprieve on a Tuesday. So I do think that traditional market's going to try, probably open the day lower again on traditional markets, maybe even head down to our next target at 265-ish region. But I wouldn't really be looking, or I'd be looking for, at the very least, a reversal attempt today again. So we'll get in that a little bit later when we focus specifically on traditional markets, but I really want to see these things line up with each other. Remember yesterday, Bitcoin came back down to the prior lows when traditional markets opened back up. Then you get the bounce right after, near the end of the day. And that's pretty much, where we left off from yesterday. So I do think we're going to get something similar today, come back down around that prior low that we put in yesterday. If Bitcoin fails to close below, let's call it like 7650, I do believe that we're going to see some sort of bullish divergence form, at the very least on a 4 hour, and I believe that it's already present on all time frames below that right now, confirmed. Yeah, we had a little bit on the 3 hour, but it's probably gonna put in some more. What about a 2 hour? Yeah, certainly have it on the 2 hour. Okay, so definitely the 4 hour. The 4 hour is the most relevant time frame here. So if that does happen, that's going to be the next big obvious indication that we are going to play at that bounce and probably test around this blue box right here, which we can say is anywhere around like 8,100, give or take about $50. But I do believe that any sort of a bounce into this region likely is going to be sold into, and I do believe that lower lows likely are in order overall. But that sort of timing component of that can, quite literally just take some time. So right now it's in no real major rush, and just the cheat code of all fucking cheat codes is still present right in front of our goddamn faces, and I really hate that things can sometimes be this simple, because we're doing all this like sophisticated technical analysis over here, or not even that sophisticated right now, but it can just be this easy sometimes. And 12-hour Stokes, as long as these babies are down, which are now deep inside the bearish control zone, hard to look for anything resembling like a medium time frame bounce. And a medium time frame bounce would be a price at, or sorry, like let's call it like a 4 hour closure above that 8,100-ish level. That's when we start to really look at it like a medium time frame bounce that's likely to bring it up another $400-$500, and very well tradable. But for right now, pressure is still very much onto the downside, and we will actually be making some bullish divergence on the 12 hour as well, assuming that it does come back down and graze these lows. But that would also imply that we do get some lower lows beforehand. So let's talk about the other scenario. What if I'm wrong on this, and Bitcoin comes down here and doesn't put in like a slightly lower low, but actually breaks the blue box territory, which we could say is about 7850, or sorry, not 7850, 7650 to the downside. Then I would look for the next relevant region to be spiked, which is actually not going to be all that helpful, because now we're getting to like really, really tight areas down here. And because Bitcoin spent so much time going sideways in this region, it is going to be an area of major fackage. And I don't feel all that confident of where the next level would be in. If I had to put something on, it would be right here, right around 7,500. So it's actually not even that big of an edge of trade. So I don't think that, I don't think that there's like a humongous opportunity in the low time frames if we do break to the downside. I do think that essentially Bitcoin would be bouncing right here again as well, about 7,500-ish region. Below this area is where things start to get quite nasty though, and we could target a move back down to about 7,100, so another $400, $500 play. Anywhere between about 7,100 and 6,900 is essentially where I'm looking for this move to likely come to over time, but that is over time. So I really need to be specific with how I kind of separate the low timeframes from the medium timeframes from the higher and the macro timeframes. High and the macro timeframes are obviously very much down here and very likely to move their way further south. Low timeframes are in bouncy bounce territory. Medium timeframes are kind of like being decided right now with the pivots that we just spoke about in mind. So I'm actually going to do this really early on this video, but I do want to look at the expected moves chart with those areas in mind. Let's once again just kind of make sure that we have them exactly as stated. And let me actually pull this one up because this is going to be a little bit more right around like 77.50. So you know what, we can actually siphon this off a little bit more. So 77.50, not 76.50 to the downside, would be the next sort of edge for that next breakdown to the downside, and I would be looking for price action to reach towards about 7,500 if that does happen on at the very least a 2-hour total closing basis, although a 4-hour would be a little bit better. So that's for the downside. For the upside, we can do this so many fucking ways here. This is going to get really confusing if I really nail down every last little piece. But obviously the most important area for changing around the medium term time frame bias would be back of about 8,100, 8,150-ish, this blue box right here. So we'll keep that in mind. Let's see how that operates with the expected moves with regards to historical volatility percentile, and putting them on right now. Let's see what the probabilities would be for these ranges. Now keep in mind, remember, 77.50 to the downside, 8,100-ish to the upside. And bringing it over to a 12-hour here, it would say that we actually do have a little bit of support coming in down around the bottom side of the first deviation, coming around 77.50. So I do like that lines up with it, and it does essentially kind of confirm what I'm thinking, that Bitcoin probably does come back down to it. Is it likely to break it? It would say that we have a less than 16% chance to break below that on a 12-hour closing basis, and probably do put in some divergence, assuming that Bitcoin comes down there without actually breaking it. So again, putting the puzzle piece together, I do still think that the most likely thing here is to happen is that we're going to come back down around the prior low, set in maybe a slightly lower low on the on like a 2-hour or 4-hour total closing basis. But assuming that it doesn't break on especially like 77.50, I would be looking for that divergence to likely bring things back up and test the top side of the first deviation over the next day or so. And where is that coming in? Absolutely beautifully right below 8,100. And this will obviously shift as price action kind of moves around, but I do like the way that things are situated right here. And of course they are still curled to the downside. So I do think that actually would be that would be indicative of this likely getting sold into. And so Bitcoin's going to have its ebbs and flows, of course, but at the end of the day, the probabilities are still on the downside here after a little bit of a short-term bouncy bounce, which I think is likely to still play out maybe at the beginning of today, around the time that New York Stock Exchange opens. The next big thing that I do want to talk about is actually, while we are here on, let's actually go to the daily. I didn't really talk about this. Daily's very nasty as well. We do see that the first deviation is encompassing the area to the upside at 8,150, so less than a 16% chance back above there today. The reason why that's relevant is because that actually changed around the medium-term time frame bias, letting targeting the next move back up to like 8,600 essentially. So that's $500 move. That's very much tradable, but again, less than 16% chance to close above there today in the next 24 hours. By the same token, to the downside, it is showing 76.50-ish region, so right in line with the wick. So we could get a wick down there, but as long as we don't close below, let's call it 77.50, I do think that ends up putting in some divergence, and we will test the more preliminary resistance of this region. But to be clear, I do think that more preliminary resistance right around 8,100, we'll call it, does end up being a nice rejection before further fall through to the downside. But anyways, that's my opinion on it. The probabilities are just what they are. That's just straight up math. Anyways, taking this back off, and I do want to talk about something that funnily enough, I've not heard too many people talk about, which is kind of funny because people are usually very quick to speak about these sorts of things. I haven't even talked about it the last couple of days, even though it is very much valid. But we do have a head and shoulders on our higher time frames right here, not just this guy right here, but also on the on the greater picture between this this base right here, neckline 8350, we'll call it 8400, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, kind of like a double head essentially. That can certainly happen. There's no major issue with that, but that does also imply a target to the downside as long as we are below the neckline of this. So let's actually put a few more pieces of the puzzle together, because this neckline is actually going to be a major area going forwards, and it would not be appropriate to be high time frame bullish on this asset until we get back above there, as that would insinuate that the damage to the downside is done, and whatever target that this is going to print, which is probably down into like well below 7,000, is not going to get hit, or at least it's not the main idea as it is right now. But before we do that, I do want to see where the probabilities on the daily are kind of around there. And yeah, we do see, oh shit, there's too many things going on. Yeah, we do see the third standard, or sorry, no, it's not the third. It should be between the second and third. So let's actually put it in right here. We're actually working on a new, come on, second and third would be right here. Yeah, that's exactly where it is actually. Oh, perfect, fucking perfect. So that would be the 2.5 standard deviation. What I have to do some bad mental math right now. That'd be less than 2.5, and it's gonna be like 1% chance that we get back above there today. So are we gonna go back above there today? No, very unlikely, I should say. It's a little bit more accurate, but that certainly can shift over time. But I just want to show that today markets ain't reversing anytime soon. As far as the higher timeframes go, don't get me wrong about that. Lower term timeframes, yes, I actually do think that we're going to play out a little bit of upside. Anyways, as it stands right here, there are a lot of things to really be aware of. But while we are focusing on this as a head and shoulders, I do want to just posture what would be the measure move on this, and I guess I already have done this because it's pointed all the way down here, essentially towards our December lows. Now, there is another great meme in this market being spread around that Bitcoin always has made its high or the low for the year in January of that year, which this would obviously negate that, and I don't really think that sort of stuff is I don't really think that it's relevant, even though it has worked out, to be fair. Even though it has worked out, I think that that's more or less just an indication of, well, the immaturity of this asset that hasn't been around for all that long. Regardless of the fact, if Bitcoin does actually play out the measure move of this, it would be pointed down again towards about 6,700, which would obviously be below our January lows right here. So here's the thing. While I do think that Bitcoin is going to head its way down to the low 7,000s or maybe upper 6,000s, I do think that it's probably going to have a massive bounce there. And what's really going to be happening for the rest of the year in 2020 is that we're going to create a range between this base right here and then declining highs going all the way from our $14,000 high in June of the past year, and do something like this, very reminiscent of 2018. In fact, not exactly, doesn't need to be exact, but all rallies have essentially failed up until now, and are still failing, unfortunately. And with this formation, it certainly does remind me a lot of what 2018 was, which essentially was just a tightening range for the whole year with, all these failed rallies somewhere around this trend line right here. So I would actually put this one in. Usually I don't fuck around with diagonal trend lines, but this one does seem to be working, and more importantly, as long as it's following this, I would be looking for something relatively similar to 2018 to happen, with the low 7,000s to upper 6,000s area being essentially like what the low 6,000s area was in 2016. You do kind of see the setup going on here. Longer term, we do have this forming from a volume signature standpoint. So not only do we have descending volume going on over here, but we do have these lower highs over a long period of time, with the exception of one weekly high being a little bit higher right here. But I do think that is the purpose of it, to be a little bit of a bull trap. We did have a kind of the same thing going on in 2018 as well for this area right here. Remember, we had all these highs coming in lower right here. Bitcoin broke it after putting in this inverted head and shoulders right here, and then everyone got super excited. We did kind of a similar thing right in over here with this inverted head and shoulders, or descending brawny wedge. It's technically more of a descending brawny wedge than an inverted head and shoulders, to be fair, but same sort of thing, right? Except this one, while it actually did get above the trend line if we were to make the trend line like this, but more importantly, a failed rally nonetheless. And that's kind of my point, and what is very, very similar about these two about these two phases of the market cycle. So I do think that we're kind of in for a very similar environment to what we saw in 2018, and that's essentially going to be the call. As long as we're below this high right here, this is going to be so damn important important going forwards, 10,500. Even then, above 10,500, we still have to deal with the $12,000 region, which has just been a harassing bully for Bitcoin for the last, ever since 2018, essentially. So fair enough. But the volume signature is further confirming this and would suggest that we do get a breakout probably somewhere around here. So that would be in August, September of 2020. As far as the volume signature, it's kind of on the same pace as well. I'm curious if the other exchanges would agree with this. Maybe BitMEX would be a good one to reference right now. And yeah, more or less, we do see that descending volume over time, which does kind of confirm this as a nice long form consolidation, which at its current level is, well, certainly more on the bear side, long term, of course. So I'm not looking for this to be resolved anytime soon, but I do want to, be on the record as saying that I think that this is probably what Bitcoin's going on long term, and that's essentially my main idea. As long as Bitcoin is essentially above, let's call it like 6,800 on a daily closing basis, and following this descending trend line right here, on a daily closing basis as well, until we break one of those two areas, I don't think that I just think that this is one massive consolidation on the macro. And if 2018 is anything to go about, or if just the fact that a descending triangle is bearish in its nature, well, we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. But I don't think that this is breaking anytime soon. And of course, this will obviously change as time goes on, as things typically do. What do I want to say before we move on a little bit? Yeah, so the daily, I want to follow up on this as well. So I was speaking a lot to this last week. Remember last week when we were speaking about the yellow 21 exponential moving average and the green 55 exponential moving average right around here, crossing to the downside as this failed rally was getting rejected at the same time. That is picture fucking perfect. If you're in the TA program, that is exactly what you're fucking looking for right there. Exactly what you're looking for. And we can go throughout the history of Bitcoin to see what the typical, result of this cross is. Even in counter trend markets, which right now, are we in a counter trend market? Well, not on the daily. The daily trend has been down ever since 9,600. But I do want to measure this one out just to get an idea. And anytime that we do have a nice cross, we typically do, have some nice moves, spurned upon that. We got a 32% move from the last bullish one that we saw. We had Jesus Christ, this one let it all the way down from like 10,000 down to 6,000. So this one's a 38% move right there. This one's going to be absolutely astronomical right here. It's not going to really be fair, but that's a 275% move. Then in 2018, this is what I'm more interested with, because we have a lot of failed rallies here. But I'm curious how much it still got even on these failed attempts. This one about 17%. This one over here from signal given to next high about 11.5%. This one let it all the way down the whole fucking way. So fair enough. Anyways, going back into our more proximal times, since getting that cross, and just on the lower end, we typically get a little bit into the double digits for a failed cross, and 30% plus on it, on an efficacious cross. And what do you know right now? We're already down about 18%. So if we were to stretch this all the way down to the lower end of this range, as, again, presuming that low 7,000s, upper 6,000s is likely a good bottoming area, that would be kind of in line with with an average of what this cross typically does. And by that time, well, we should probably see a lot of these momentum oscillators unfuck themselves. But as it stands right now, daily Stokes are very much down and getting shuffled back down below the bearish control zone. So very obviously bears are in control. You don't need the fucking Stokes to tell you that, of course. Looking at daily RSI, no bullish divergence can be had here anytime soon. So that would be the next big thing. As far as I'm concerned, I saw some very interesting analyses on bullish divergence on the daily yesterday. There's nothing at all whatsoever representative of bullish divergence here, like in any way, shape, or form, as it stands right now. Historical volatility percentile is printing red, but that can certainly, I'm looking for it to mature a little bit. Some like this, some like this, some like this, some like this. So we're only about 3-4 days in. So it is, it certainly is getting hot right now, but we likely get a little bit more continuation before this move has reached its final destination, before the next sort of like medium term or high term time, or sorry, more like a high time frame bounce. But as it stands right now, still pressure down all across the board. I'm curious if there's any sort of obvious signals on any other time frame that I'm looking at right now. No, I don't necessarily see it. So let's go over here to the weekly and start to wrap up Bitcoin a little bit more. I do need to put on the 89 exponential moving average, as that is the savior for now. Now we are bouncing off the 89 exponential moving average, and I do think that it's probably going to bounce a little bit more here and there. like I said, back up to 8,100 or even 8,150 is not going to, rock the boat all that much. You do see where that is. That's exactly where the 55 exponential moving average is as it stands right now. More importantly, we do see that weekly Stochs crossing the downside right over here. And anytime that we've seen the weekly Stochs cross the downside, not been great, except for 2017 during the most powerful bull market of maybe of all time. Looking at weekly RSI, more importantly, I do think that we're going to come back down and retest these lows over here, and probably put in some nice, put in some nice curvature on this. If you see that, that would be a good long-term indication that we are going to try to accumulate in this region. But for right now, you can see a clear and obvious rejection of the bullish control zone. We are back below the blue box of peace and prosperity right here, and more importantly, the exponential is back below that region as well. In fact, the exponential never even got above, which should have been the obvious signal to myself that that was likely to turn into a rejection. Anyways, the exponential, that is what I use it for essentially, and as long as we're below that, and especially below the neutral zone, hard to be looking for a local low as far as the weekly goes. On top of that, yes, we are kind of resting on the 89 exponential moving average right now, or bouncing off it. But I do think that overall, we're probably going to come back down and retest these lows right here. The question is, how soon does that happen? I don't think it's happening today or tomorrow. I think that maybe it happens like next week or the week after that. These things typically do take their time. But while it is on the tip of my tongue, I do want to bring up the monthly here as well, and just show that the higher time frames, are suggesting that we do go a little bit lower. You do see that the 21 exponential moving average is coming in right around about 7,450, 7,500-ish region. So I do think that at the very least we will test that region probably this month. We do see that momentum oscillators all in the monthly are pointed down right now. We got monthly Stochs not necessarily confirming that. We still got like another 3 weeks in this month. It's just started. More importantly, monthly RSI not looking good here after rejection of the exponential once again. More or less flat on the whole though, and that makes me want to look at the accumulation distribution indicator, which is been pretty much the second biggest cheat code in Bitcoin history for the long-term moves. As we do see, anytime that we have a slope shift on this, doesn't matter if it's green or red, don't care about that, but anytime we have a slope shift, that's a major shift in market behavior. And what do you know, the last shift that we saw was right in over here at the top of this one. Yes, Bitcoin does move a little bit higher, but that ends up being a major sell, and the slope has remained the same to the downside, pretty fucking aggressive. The thing is that because that slope is so aggressive to the downside right now, it does make me think that pressure will let up relatively soon, because we typically don't have this aggressive of a slope sustained for all that long, except for this area right here. So perhaps you're going to be very, very wrong on that one as well. But again, it would say that we're probably going to create a range between the 21 and these ascending highs right here over, over the whole probably next 4 or 5 months maybe, as that's usually what a monthly is correlating with. It would also say that if we actually do close a monthly below the 21 exponential moving average, I would be looking for moves down to the mid 5,000. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, and I don't want to talk about too much long-term analysis. I want to say that really for Sunday, but I do want to speak about this as I look at the time and realize that we're a little bit less than 30 minutes right now. So I do want to start to wrap this up. But if we do start to break below, let's call it like the current weekly low at I think like 7,000-ish bucks, whatever it is, then yes, I don't think that Bitcoin's really going to do too much stopping except for the lower term timeframes in the 6,000s. I think that we will head down to about 5,500. It's not only the 55 on the monthly, but it is also the weekly. Hey, weekly, the 200 simple should be right around there, and yes, indeed it is, as it is coming in right around our last major breakout from April 2019. So I actually really do like that area, about 5,500-ish region, and we should also notice that there's probably gonna be some other things lining up with there as well. If we put on the drawing tools, I guess I don't even have anything in there, but we do have some sort of Fibonacci extension coupled down here as well. The 1.272, and they should always line up with each other. This is only fib this is only fib retracement from the current low of this run to the high of this run. Realistically, what we should be doing now is we should actually be realizing that it's more like this, taking the high of the last run, and you do see that these areas line up pretty damn well. Bitcoin getting stonewalled here at the 0.5, breakdown below the 618, currently trying to hold on to the 786. So we probably do, hover around here for a little bit, but ultimately, I do like these areas down here. So that's, again, longer term. Shorter term, more or less probably swipe the lows again, then bounce up. I don't think that Bitcoin's breaking down like today to 7,500, maybe later this week or something like that. But I think that most of the damage for this week has probably been done. Let's go check out traditional markets while we're on the topic. And traditional markets having an absolutely abysmal close. Now, I did say that, the last couple of weeks, if things do break down further, which obviously they are right now, I don't think that we actually have that much further further to go. I said 275 would be an area and 265 would be the other area that I'd be looking at long term. Now, this is bringing up a very interesting discussion because people are saying, are we headed into a recession or not? Or are we headed into a depression? It's kind of irrelevant, these sort of terminologies, because technically speaking, when you're down about 30%, that's a recession. When you're down like 40 to 60%, that's a depression. Does it help you to know those terms? I mean, if you want to be like the cool person at the fucking cocktail party, like being, excuse me, we're not 30% down right now. We're only 20% down. It doesn't help. As a trader, as a trader, I don't care what you call this. This is a very intense downwards move, but I do think that it's going to likely try. Well, it already tried the bounce yesterday. I mean, this was a pretty fucking massive bounce yesterday. Now it's very likely to open up lower today. There's no excuse for this. This is fucking continuation for sure. Not for sure. Sorry, I should not say it like that. That was a 4% move to the upside, instantly rejected and back down, closing on lows. Yeah, there ain't nothing bullish about that. So probably does open up lower today. Do we reach for that 265 target next? That is right in line with the 200 simple and probably 200 exponential moving average as well. Let me actually put them back on. Yes, indeed they are. So, I'd be looking for the next major stop to be happening somewhere right around here. 275, unlikely to be anything more than just a short-term or medium-term stop, which we basically already saw yesterday. I mean, that was a $10 rally essentially from low to high and then instantly rejected. That's not good at all. So I would say that probably overall going to reach lower. Does it spend a little bit of time going sideways here? Maybe. Maybe. I don't really have a strong opinion on that. But more importantly, I do think that we are reaching pretty damn extremes right here as historical volatility percentile is getting so damn red, but as you can see, it can certainly maintain that redness for a while, and typically it is going to come down and make a slightly lower low. So what I'd be looking for to declare a low, to talk about a low and like really be confident about a low, is kind of the same thing that I'd be looking for on Bitcoin. I want to see historical volatility percentile get very, very red. I want to see us get around some sort of like major, massive moving average on a higher time frame like the weekly. And then I want to see bullish divergence on, at the very least, a daily. Right now, you can certainly see that we will be making bullish divergence on the daily. It will be in there. Even if we make like significantly lower lows right here, like down to the 265 region. But once we get like 2 or 3 stabs of that, that's when I really start to look at this as likely to produce a nice, at the very least, medium and even long-term low, and it's going to try to rally, very, 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 very likely to try to rally off that, and then we can come back and see if the rally is real or not. Of course, rallies can fail, but I would be looking for a prolonged bounce, squeeze some shorts, and then if it turns into a reversal, well, we'll know if price action gets back above about 300. We'll call it. That would once again shift me back to a bull on traditional markets, but for right now, it's going to be ranging on the lows for a little bit of time. I would look for also something like this as well that we saw in December 2018. Traditional markets love to bottom on these V bottoms, so it will be very, 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 very fast. But here's the thing, again, just look at the volume of this. This is extremes right here. Extreme volatility, extremes, 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 extreme. You see all of this, and these are major pivots on the market, typically speaking. So I do think that we're relatively close from a higher time frame perspective, but I do think now that likely to hit the 265 area. I don't think that 275 is going to be it. That rejection yesterday was a little bit too fast for it to make anyone that comfortable. Anyways, let's go check out some of the top shitcoins, see how they're doing. Where's my Buterol? Buterol back below $200 and looking like he wants to come back down and test around 192, 193 region. So I do think that it's going to swipe the lows again alongside Bitcoin. Overall, daily Jewel is saying to hodl your shorts a little bit longer. It is giving you a continuation sell signal right here. Again, read that as like a hodl your shorts that you started from much higher, probably on this rejection right here. No daily bullish divergence to be had anytime soon, and historical volatility percentile is starting to show red, so I don't think that we have like too much further down to go here before the next medium-term time frame bounce or higher term time frame bounce. Probably, if I had to call it right now, 180-ish region is where I'd be looking towards, and that's going to correlate with Bitcoin down around the low 7,000s. So let's call it like 7,100. Doesn't need to be too exact, but remember, it's the weekly that's really driving this price action, and the weekly that's been really more or less obvious with this price action. And to me, this is likely to do something similar to what Bitcoin's doing long term. We do see a long-term formation going on right here. Now, this one would be obviously the opposite of what I'm kind of postulating on Bitcoin. So this one would be a little bit more on the positive side, of course, being an ascending triangle. But for now, keeping in mind that this probably doesn't break until literally like October, November of 2020 this year. For now, we do have major hidden bearish divergence, which we spoke about last week at the top side of the range, likely getting rejected by the 10 simple right here. I do think that overall this thing is going to move its way down to like 155 or 150 base and give a test towards this trend line. We do see the same sort of momentum oscillators pointed down on weekly right here. In fact, following the same trend line coming in all the way from when? All the way from March 2017. And that was quite literally at this high right here. And all of these crosses down that we've seen on Mr. Buteral on the weekly Stokes have correlated with these major massive moves down. I mean, I actually really remember this move right here in 2017. This was a 65% move down from like 350 to 150 or something like that. Then we got this one right here at the quite literal like ultimate high, another 70% move down right there. So we're talking about a 60% move and a 70% move. Then more recently, we got this one right here, which brought us all the way down to 64.5% move right there. And then more recently happening right here. Let's just see, what would be reasonable given the past performance of this. And what do you know, if we test the bottom side trend line of this, that would be about 50%. If we were to extend that, to be exactly in line with the last few ones at like 65%, that would bring us back down around 100 low. So I do think that's quite likely to test this trend line, play out this hidden bearish divergence, test the bottom side of this range, and likely does bounce there though. I don't think that's going to break, especially on the first pass. Looking at Mrs. Litecoin, very similar, except it's already kind of tested the same trend line. Now we could do this with Wix, which would suggest that it's a little bit lower, somewhere right around like 39 bucks to 40 bucks. But for right now, I do think that it bounces a little bit off this. We don't have the same hidden bearish divergence here. We do have the same Stokes coming down though, which has not been all that great for Mrs. Litecoin in the past. And more importantly, we're not really even seeing historical volatility percentile get all that hot right now. I'm curious how it looks like on the daily. The daily is getting hot, which is what you should expect. So I would be looking for it to probably come back down, graze the lows, but I don't think that it's actually going to break below this low right here. I think that it will end up following this trend line. And if we are looking at this on a daily, let's actually mark this for a daily, and it would suggest probably back down to like 43 and a quarter, we'll call it. As far as that goes, same sort of issues here. No bullish divergence at all whatsoever. I do think that if it does come down around here, we probably will start to put in some bullish divergence alongside this trend line, and that's probably going to be good enough for a higher time frame bounce. And that's pretty much what I think about the general market. And all these charts more or less look the same. We can take a quick look at Link, as Link has been one of the darlings of this market, consistently doing something different. And we did hit our this was from the Twitch stream last night. We did hit our 360 target from yesterday. Bounce is not that strong right now. I do think that it probably gives another test back up towards like maybe like $4.5 maybe, but I don't think that it's going to pull through here. The daily jewel has called it once again, and I do believe that this is going to play out. Telling you to sell right here at about 470, so not at the ultimate high, because the ultimate high was above $5 thus far, but likely to play out. So I do think that's going to bounce up a little bit more, and then this is going to come down with the rest of the market most likely. The jewel is very now I would have not said this myself. If I was just looking at this one myself, I would still be bullish on this, but anytime that I've kind of fought the jewel in the past, it has not boded well for me, even though the weekly does still look healthy. But I don't know if Link is strong enough, powerful enough to buck the whole market trend. It has in the past, so if anything is going to do it, Link is going to be that one, or very, very likely to be that one. I mean, this was 2018 right here, where it was basically putting in a very, very constructive low and working off that. And this is still constructive over here, to be fair. So you know what? Is the jewel going to be wrong? And I'm going to be right. This would be the first. This would be if my opinion is that this one actually is still probably fine, but the jewel is saying no. This would be the first time where the jewel would be wrong and I would be right, where I disagree with the jewel, more importantly. So, as it stands right now, if I'm reading it in the way that the jewel wants me to read it, it says we probably pop back up a little bit, maybe around $4.5, but that's going to be a sell most likely. My personal opinion though is that it actually looks still fine, but that's the that's the advantage of having the jewel, is that it usually tells me when I'm probably going to be wrong. Anyways, let's see what else we want to look at. I think that pretty much gets just about everything. I mean, as far as the rest of the market, we have like the tier, like the next tier down from Mr. Ripple's nipples having major hidden bearish evidence, but that's likely already played out. As long as this one is below 25 and a half cents, we actually will inevitably get the death cross on the weekly, which is probably going to be the impetus to send this thing back down to single digit cents. I shouldn't say that with the Ripple Nation watching right now, but weekly Stokes incredibly weak, no pun intended. Weekly RSI also incredibly weak. Does a daily bounce here a little bit with the rest of the market? Maybe bounces back up to 22 cents, but overall, I think that this one's going to be testing the prior lows of 18 and a half cents and probably go lower over time. And that's what a lot of the less strong charts look like. Let's go take a look at GBTC and then CMEs and then call this one call this one. GBTC reached all the way down to our December lows. So that is around the upper 6,000. So, GBTC typically does lead to the downside, and we're probably going to get another death cross on GBTC here. Not that I care all that much about crosses on GBTC, but more importantly, you do see it's going to likely try to bounce off this region. I'd pretty much consider this a test of the 200 simple here. The thing is that does spot price action follow as it typically does to the downside? That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Anyways, let's go see if there's anything obvious on CMEs that I haven't caught on traditional markets, or sorry, on the spot price markets as well. CMEs would look a little bit more on the bearish side. We do have a clear and obvious rejection and a head and shoulders on the weekly RSI right here, which would likely bring us back down to the 7,100 base. Weekly SOS coming down pretty damn hard as well. Not been good for Bitcoin long term. Let's go to a daily. Daily looks like continuation here. It almost looks like it's already kind of tried to play out this bounce. Even the 200 simple is well above all price action right now and starting to really lose its positive slope and perhaps going to start to curl down relatively soon too. Daily Jewel for CMEs is likely a halt or short signal as well. I just want to see one more curling down here, and that will further confirm it and likely get that next swipe down into this region right here. So let's go back into Bitcoin and wrap this bitch up. Go back to a 4 hour perhaps. Is Bitcoin likely to bounce up here a little bit, or are we going to come down and swipe this level? I do still think that Bitcoin probably swipes this level again somewhere right around 77.50, but I don't think that it's ready to break down below it just yet. I think that it's probably going to bounce there after putting in a little bit of bullish divergence, and then we'll come back up somewhere around this blue box territory at about 8,100, we'll call it, and I'd imagine it's likely going to turn into a rejection, and that's going to set us up for the next impetus after letting the lower time frame oscillators reset a little bit and working our way a little bit further south. I do think that overall Bitcoin will be headed lower, down to the low 7,000s, upper 6,000s, wherever this kind of area is right here, about 7,100-ish region it looks like. And but that that can take some time. So right now, I suppose I will be wrong on that, and we will get further continuation sooner rather than later. If the 4 hour does close even like a 2 hour below about 77.50 or even like or especially 7,700, I would look for the next $250 to $300 move down to about 7,500ish region right here, and another low time frame bounce there. But likely to just be just a lower time frame bounce before setting up for continuation into the real region, which I'm really looking for down around here. Ultimately, by the same token, could Bitcoin absolutely just blast through to the upside here? Is that possible? Of course, anything's possible, right? But what's probable? It's not very probable, as we looked at with the probability table or probability ranges. But more importantly, if Bitcoin were to get back above, let's call it 81.50 and close a 4 hour dodo above there, then yes, I'd look for an extension of about $400-$500 up to about 8,600 and probably look for another rejection right there. Anyways, that's going to do it for right now. I will very likely be back on Twitch later tonight, maybe even some Call of Duty later tonight, because they got this new game mode, which I am raring to check out. I want to wish you well once again, and until next time, take care.